It was an ordinary autumn afternoon in the small town of Willow Creek when 17-year-old Sarah Mitchell vanished without a trace. The day had started like any other. Bright sunshine cutting through the crisp October air, leaves crunching underfoot as the townsfolk carried on with their daily routines. No one could have predicted that by nightfall, Willow Creek would be consumed by a mystery that would haunt the town for years to come. Sarah was a well-known face around town. Her family, the Mitchells, had lived in Willow Creek for generations. Her father, John, ran the local hardware store, and her mother, Alice, was an elementary school teacher. Sarah was the kind of girl everyone admired, kind, smart, and full of life. She had plans to leave Willow Creek for college the following year, a future brimming with potential. But that bright future dimmed the moment she disappeared. On the day she vanished, Sarah had told her parents she was going to meet her friends at the park and then stop by the library to pick up some books for a school project. When evening came and she hadn't returned home, her mother began to worry. It wasn't like Sarah to stay out late without telling anyone. As the hours passed, worry turned into dread. By midnight, a search party had been organized. Dozens of neighbors and friends combed the streets, parks, and woods surrounding the town, calling her name into the still night. The local police force, small and largely inexperienced with anything more serious than petty theft, was ill-equipped for a missing persons case of this magnitude. Despite their best efforts, there were no signs of Sarah. She had seemingly vanished into thin air. As days turned into weeks, Willow Creek's serene facade began to crack. The town that had always felt so safe now seemed shadowed by a growing sense of fear and suspicion. The police interviewed everyone, family, friends, teachers, and even the town's few strangers passing through. No one knew anything. There were no witnesses, no leads, no clues. The more they searched, the more it felt like Sarah had simply evaporated from existence. Rumors began to swirl. Some speculated that Sarah had run away, perhaps overwhelmed by the pressure of her looming future. Others whispered darker theories, hinting at foul play, pointing fingers at people in town with troubled pasts. Was it an abduction? A jealous friend? Someone lurking in the woods? The theories multiplied, but none of them led to Sarah. Then there was the forest, dense and sprawling just beyond the edge of town. It was the kind of place where people rarely ventured, filled with thick undergrowth and old towering trees. For generations, local folklore had painted it as a place of mystery. Stories of strange lights, eerie sounds, and lost wanderers filled the town's history. As the search for Sarah dragged on with no leads, the whispers grew louder. Had the forest taken her? A month after Sarah's disappearance, a breakthrough finally seemed within reach. A hiker, passing through the outskirts of the forest, claimed to have found something unusual, a torn piece of fabric snagged on a branch, red in color, like the jacket Sarah had been wearing the day she vanished. Search teams swarmed the area, combing every inch of the woods, but despite their efforts, the jacket remained elusive, and no other clues were uncovered. With no physical evidence and no signs of struggle, the investigation grew cold. As the months wore on, hope began to fade. The Mitchell family, once vibrant and full of life, withdrew into themselves, their home growing quieter with each passing day. The townspeople too grew weary. Life in Willow Creek went on, but something had changed. There was an unspoken agreement that things would never quite return to the way they were before Sarah disappeared. A year later, on the anniversary of Sarah's disappearance, a memorial was held in the town square. Hundreds of people gathered, lighting candles and sharing stories of the girl who had touched so many lives. But beneath the surface, there was still a gnawing sense of incompleteness. an ache that no memorial could soothe. The question still hung in the air, heavier than ever. What had happened to Sarah Mitchell? Just when it seemed that the mystery would remain unsolved forever, a startling revelation emerged from an unexpected source. An old journal belonging to Sarah's best friend, Emma, was discovered in the attic of her childhood home. In it, Emma had written about strange occurrences in the weeks leading up to Sarah's disappearance. Vague references to an unnamed person who had been watching them, following them through town. The journal entries, filled with fear and confusion, suggested that Sarah had confided in Emma about feeling uneasy, as if someone had been tracking her movements. Emma had never shared this information with anyone, believing at the time that it was nothing more than youthful paranoia. But now, with Sarah gone, the cryptic entries took on a chilling new significance. Who was this mysterious person, and why hadn't they come forward? The discovery of the journal breathed new life into the investigation. For the first time in months, there was a fresh lead. But even with this new information, the case remained frustratingly elusive. The mysterious figure in the journal was never identified, and the police couldn't determine whether it was connected to Sarah's disappearance or just a coincidence. Years have passed since that fateful autumn day in Willow Creek. The town has largely moved on, though the shadow of Sarah Mitchell's disappearance still lingers. New families have come to town, unaware of the tragedy that once gripped the community. But for those who lived through it, the story of Sarah's vanishing is never far from their minds. Her face, still smiling and full of hope, remains on missing persons posters around town, slowly fading with time, but never truly forgotten. Even today, people still whisper about Sarah Mitchell. Some say she was taken by someone who knew her well. Others believe she was lured away by forces beyond comprehension, vanishing into the eerie woods that border the town. But the truth remains out of reach, locked away in a mystery that may never be solved. In Willow Creek, one thing is certain: Sarah Mitchell is gone, but her story is far from over. This story mixes eerie suspense with emotional depth, leaving the mystery of Sarah's disappearance open to interpretation, drawing readers into the intrigue. Subscribe this channel and share.